In our previous video, we have compromised a remote Linux using the exploit against this ProAPTPD service because it has a vulnerability that allows us to get code execution, and through that way we receive the shell. And that shell is available here as the shell session 10. And we executed some commands, but this is a user session. And we can see that the user is www data because we have used a web service integration there as well as user. So we need something to elevate our privileges. And that's why we have suggester. Previously we used for Windows. So let's use this local exploit suggester against the session 10. And let's run it and see whether or not it is useful here. We can always respawn this shell using the exploit, but in a red team exercise, generally we don't use exploits this much because first, they are unstable, second, they may kill the remote service, which is a production environment, and the third one is they may kill our only session. That means we may lose the entire connection. But in this case, we are actually passing through the tunnel and we are targeting the specific Linux server. So we exactly know what we are exactly doing. In this case, we are targeting this Linux server, just like in this diagram. So we are looking for an exploit which can be used against this Linux system. Exploit suggester will find some of the local Linux exploits here or configuration weaknesses. That could be some AT or cron jobs or sudo exploits or directly a kernel exploit, which can be quite unstable for us. Not even a service, it may crash the entire system. That's why we need to go to the safest option instead of jumping to the kernel directly. And 10 exploit checks are being tried, but still waiting for it. While we tried some of those privilege checks, it failed. So let's use this manually. Use exploit and Linux and local and see what exploits do we have. We have a lot of exploits. Maybe using Ubuntu as a search key, we can find more. These are the exploits available for everything almost, and including the targets that would be quite important here. Reptile rootkit, receive privilege ask, service persistency, which is quite old, and pkexec. This may be used, or we can go to RDS. So let's work with a couple of those. For example, pkexec or RDS or receive this. Based on the version, such as we know 14.04 is available here, we can jump to maybe 14 or 18. Both ranges are suitable. I will take my chance with this one, and I will use this against the session 10. As we use Python PTY, it may fail on this. So our session must be here. Okay, the session is responsive, so we can set this session and we can exploit this. But exploit will create another session, and that is again reverse, that we don't want to. Set payload, Linux, x64, interpreter, which are good, but we need bind. So this time it is important again, because the bind exploit will be connecting through the tunnel again. Reverse connection coming from that server won't find us at all. And I'm using another port to avoid any conflict with ProFTPD exploitation. And let's exploit this. Session may not be compatible with this module, it says, and probably it will fail. The session type will be interpreter or normal Linux shells, but this won't work always. So let's use the other ones. And Linux and local, and look at the other ones. We got pkexec, and I will set the same thing for our Linux payload and our remote host. So make sure that our payload is correct and L port is still here, and our session is session 10. Let's exploit. So we don't see anything here. So we can stop it, and we can use another one. Use Linux local. Linux and local, and this time Docker privilege escalation. So the remote host is set, and payload is set as well, but we don't know. Sorry, as well as our host. Yes. Now our exploit is Docker, the daemon privilege escalation, and our payload is bind instead of reverse. Our remote IP is here, and the port is set. We only need session to run this. And let's see whether or not it will work. The session type is not ideal, as we previously mentioned. but we'll see. Target is not vulnerable, it says.